Just the Opposite, a Marvel fanfiction written on AO3 by J.K.H. The link for this fanfiction will be in the description box below, so I encourage you all to go check it out. It's too early for this, Tony sighs, putting the recipe he printed on the marble counter. What made him think waking up too early to make pancakes from scratch was a good idea? Ah yes, the spiderling who is currently sleeping in his bedroom because he had a nightmare. The things he would do and the extents he would go for this boy baffled him sometimes. Reluctantly, the engineer picked up the piece of paper, trudging around the pristine kitchen to gather ingredients and cutlery. He really should be increasing his pace if he wanted to finish the pancakes before Peter woke up, especially since the teen had super hearing and would wake to the sound of clanging. But really, Tony had maybe 3 hours of sleep and was too busy chasing the nightmares away from his young hero, so the sluggishness could be excused. Looking at all the ingredients displayed before him, the recipe seemed to mock him for his incompetence in the kitchen. Tony wonders if he should ask Pepper for help. Alas, his CEO had already left the penthouse to do CEO things, being responsible and the adult she is, and all. So the poor billionaire was left to his own devices. And honestly, with how he burnt an omelette after taking hours to make it, Tony didn't have much hope with the pancakes. He was still going to try, of course, but just looking at the recipe hurt his brain. How did professional chefs do this? Mechanics and fixing things was just so much easier, in his opinion. Tony looks at everything displayed before him and sighs again. Hopefully, with any luck, Peter won't wake up to burnt pancakes, and Pepper won't go back to a messy kitchen. Peter wakes up with a headache, as expected after the nightmares and crying himself to sleep. He hears a distant sound of clanging, and then a crash, followed by a curse, and he decided he has no time to sleep off his headache. Rolling his heavy body out of bed, the teen slips to his feet in his soft, fluffy bunny slippers, before dragging himself back into the kitchen. In the hallway, with a perfect view of the kitchen, he sees the mess. Mr. Stark is wearing an apron that reads, "I am the boss," looking anything but a boss. There is a bowl filled with some sort of batter splattered on the kitchen floor, and was that flour in his hair? He looked at his mentor as he pulls out his hair, staring in distress at the slight mess he made, cursing with a frown on his face. Peter starts, trying to hide his smile behind his hand, while his mentor whips around with the most guilty expression he's ever seen. "Mr. Stark, are you okay?" "Okay, do I look—" The adult takes a deep breath, looking like he'd rather be in his lab than in the kitchen. "I'm okay, I'm totally fine. Everything's going exactly as I planned." Peter eyes the mess on the floor, watching as the thick batter spreads. "Do you want my help?" "No, I don't want your help. I'm a grown adult, and I can do adult things, like cook pancakes," Mr. Stark said, following Peter's gaze, and they both stare at the growing mess. "Okay, maybe I do need your help. Yay, let's make pancakes together." The young hero cheers, smiling brightly. They start afresh by clearing the ruined batter on the floor, and because Peter is a good kid, and they can't possibly work with the mess mocking them on the floor, they measure the ingredients perfectly, as stated in the recipe, and separates them into different bowls. Then they dump the ingredients together and laugh, as when they whip too hard, causing some batter to fly and smack them in the face. Of course, they are science geniuses, so the next part will be a little tricky, for there was no maths involved. Plus, with Tony's lack of culinary skills and May as Peter's guardian, they were bound to fail. Oil! Did you put oil?" Peter frantically asks his mentor, looking as if he were about to dump the batter straight into the pan. "Where's the oil?" When they got that under control— "What do you mean when the edges are brown?" Peter yells at his phone. The paper with the recipe and instructions that Tony printed are long forgotten. "I need numbers. How long before we flip?" Tony's face was directly over the pan, squinting at the batter. "The edges don't look very brown. Maybe a while longer?" The younger rushes over, squeezing his head beside his mentor to see what was going on in the pan. They looked like two children, watching something for the very first time. "Do we flip now?" Tony asked, when a particularly large bubble formed. "Quick, Pete. Google mistakes to avoid when making pancakes." While Peter did as instructed, Tony decides they've waited too long and flips the pancake over, watching in horror as the pancake is completely burnt. The engineer thanks Lord they have more batter to experiment on. This was like science, kind of. Trial and error. "Mr. Stark," Peter wails, throwing his head back dramatically. The site says, have faith that the pancake will let you know when it's ready to flip. What does that even mean? Aslinger paused, suddenly standing up straight. Wait, does that mean our pancakes have to be sentient? It has to let us know... What? I'm confused, Mr. Stark. Maths is much easier than whatever this is. The billionaire nodded, dumping the burnt pancake onto a plate. He scoops up more batter into the pan and hopes he won't mess us up again. I don't think we're cut out for this. You think, Mr. Stark? We belong in a lab, Peter whines, running his hound down his face, unaware of the residual flour on his hands. The kitchen is our hell. Before they can complain more, the elevator doors open and Miss Potts steps out. She pauses at the sight of Peter's flour-covered face and burnt pancake, and Tony's disheveled appearance. What happened? I came up here to get some documents, and this is what greets me? Miss Potts teases, smiling cheekily. She walks over to the singular burnt pancake, picking it up with her bare hands. What is this? Tony rushes over to snatch the thing out of her hands, forgetting about the batter he just poured onto the pan. This is a pancake, thank you very much. While the two adults bicker, Peter smells the faint scent of burnt and cautiously looks around. When he notices smoke coming from the pan, he runs over, shouting, Mr. Stark, you burnt another pancake! Before they can do anything about it, Friday activates the sprinklers, and cool water rains upon them in the kitchen. Miss Potts shields the documents in her hand with her body, while the other two just stand there and accept their fate. That's it. Peter winces as Miss Potts starts to speak. None of you are allowed in my kitchen ever again.